Assalamu alaikum. In the previous session, we left from this slide. So we will continue from this slide too, and in this we will discuss the managerial decisions in the controlling process. Basically, what type of managerial decision we will take in the process of controlling. So we have the first objective. Objective is basically goals, targets, and desired outcome which the organization want to achieve. Every organization has some goals, some objectives, some targets. Because of it, the existence and the organization is exist or established. Then we have the standards. Basically, standards is the benchmark. Benchmark is basically um, is the process in which we see how the other company are performing, not just the competitor but the all over companies in the market, how they are performing. For example, if any company producing products, so we look what the price, what the strategy, what the competitive advantage of their product, and the similar product of the similar nature of product of other companies. So we look the benchmark, what the benchmark um, uh, is following and setting the other company, and then we will of course start processing. We will start working in reality, in real. So then we will compare our benchmark with the actual performance, how we are performing, how we are doing. So after the comparison, if we find any deviation, any variance, so and any ups and down, so we will take decision according to our change, according to our deviation. So then we will move to the next box, in which we have is a standard being attained. The standard which we set for our product, which we set for our company, the benchmark which we set, are we able to achieve it or not? If yes, so we do nothing, but if no, so we will move in the next step. Is the variance, is the deviation is acceptable? um, the deviation and the variance which we found in our actual performance compared to standard performance, so whether it is acceptable or not. If it acceptable, so we do nothing, but if it's not acceptable, so we will look at our standard, whether our standard is realistic, is fair, is achievable, and whether it's too low or it's too high. So we look at this, and if we have uh, if yes, it's acceptable, it's totally okay, it's totally realistic, it's achievable, and it's realistic, so we identify the cause of variation. If the standard is realistic, if the standard is achievable, so why we have variation in our performance, in our actual and standard performance. So this is what we looked and evaluated this process. And if not, so we revise the standard, we establish it again, we make it again, and we make it more real, more realistic, more favorable. If it's too easy, to make it more challengeable, and if it's too uh, unrealistic, so we make it fair, realistic, and achievable. And if it's okay, it's realistic, so we identify the cause of variation and we work on it, and then we correct the performance. Then we take the corrective action. So in corrective action we can take so many actions, like disciplinary action, like we punish someone, we motivate someone by reward, and we take some disciplinary action. Whatever the situation, it's depend on the organization current scenario, and the problem and the issue which organization is facing, because in this contingency environment, our organization can face any sort of problem. It depends on the organization, on culture and environment, and nature of product and the workforce, the human resource and budget, and all the demographic and geographic location. These all are the factors which impact the organization very dramatically. And then these arrows again go on actual performance. When we correct the performance, then we will actually start actioning on it, and then it's again restart. It's a continuous process, it's ongoing process. We do it again and again, try to achieve our desired targets, try to achieve our desired goals. And after it, we have the next slide, in which we have the definition of performance and then organization performance. So organization performance is basically about the organization performance. But if we talk about the performance, so in which we can do, count, or we can do, take the example of any situation, any scenario, because at this moment I am also performing something. I am putting some efforts before my lectures, and then I am in the situation of performance, and then after the lecture, after metaphysics. So basically it's the end result of an activity. So what is the actual result we got from our performance? If we take the example of students, so students are basically is also performing. They take the admission in university on their preparation, on their intelligence, on their knowledge. They clear the aptitude, and they meet the criteria of university, and then they putting uh, effort on the course, on the degree, to clear the whole semester's papers and subjects. So they are putting efforts. So they are in which we have three phases before the performance phase, in which day to day evaluation, day to day efforts, day to day strive to achieve the effective and efficient result of activity. Activity can be anything. It can be dance performing, it can be educational degree, it can be career, it can be home task, anything. So then the students actually appeared in the paper, and then they are performing on it. Some are perform good, and some are not achieve the good percentages or marks. And after the examination, they get the end results, what they got from all the phases, what they got from all the journey which they were trying to um, trying to cover it or trying to achieve. So this is all about performance. So the performance can be anything. We are doing day to day things to in we are doing day to day things in our life, which we uh, which we consider performance. If any athlete is doing activities, so he or she can also a performer. So I think it's enough for performance, and then we can move on the organizational performance. Basically, organization performance is the performance of organization, obvious, in which we are look at the end result of all organization processes and activities. In organization we have so many departments, for example sales department, production department, finance department, human resource department, and marketing department, and every department have their goals and objective, have their responsibilities, have their targets. So we evaluate the accumulated result, because if any organization is not able to achieve their results, so ultimately it's affect the all over performance of organization, and all over target and objective of organization. So if, for example, for a specific project, the organization gave the budget of 10 crore to production department, and they are not able to manage in this budget, and they do some extra expenses, do some extra expenditure. So it's basically affect the organization. And if the marketing department is not do the marketing work efficiently and effectively, so it's ultimately affect the sales department. So everyone is linked to the every department is linked to the other department. So we accumulate and we evaluate the accumulate and results of all organization work and processes, and the activities which are running and doing in the organization. Then after it we will interpret the results, whether they are performing on the standards, on the benchmark, or according to benchmark, or whether there is some lacking. So it's important to performing, because of it we will get the idea whether the organization is uh, progressing or not, or whether it's productive or not, or it's growing or developing. So after it we have the next slides, in which we have productivity, which is very important. So most of the time we are saying this, today I have a very productive day. So productive basically is what is productive. Productive is basically um, if we take the day-to-day example, so productivity is, for example, if I say it, and if any student say it, I have a productive day, so they must be wake up early, or she or he, and do breakfast on time, and invest their time in some um, good works, like reading, or like doing some assignments, like work on some job targets. So he or she can say, today I have a pretty productive day. And uh, and sometimes we say, today I waste my day. I do nothing. So productivity is basically we are inputting we are input some resources, and some resources, basically time is also resource. So in our example, basically time is resource. We are invest our time in some fruitful things. But in organization scenario, time, labor, material, and employee, workers, and assets, everything is basically input. And they are basically input their resources. in a way which result in good outputs and good sales and generate revenue. So this is the productivity. If we have a good productivity, so we are able to produce or achieve our target very efficiently and in a good way with maximum maximum effectively and efficiently, and we get the good revenue by we get the good output. So for example, if we take the example of production department, and the organization gave them the target of 10 lakh pens, garments company. Okay, and they are arrange the shift of worker in a way, so in which they can evaluate per pen time and everything before planning the project. So according to the organization point of view or analysis or survey or interpretation, they can produce the 10 lakh pens in 3 months, and with 8 hour job, 8 hour working. So if the production department achieve this target in 3 months, and per day 8 hours, so they are productive because they are using their labor and using the expense, the raw material, the fabric, the clothes, and everything in a way which which benefit the organization and achieve their targets, which ultimately results in good output, and which benefits the organization when they sell in the market, and they waste less material and do work more effectively. So it's also the part of production. We do the less waste of products, less waste of material, and we take the benefit from our scarce resources, because we are in an economy, we have scarce resources, we have limited resources, so we have to use it very carefully. And then we have the next slides in which we have so many things, some models. I think this is not in our book, but we can generally discuss it. Organizational performance measure, in which we have the first is organizational effectiveness. Basically, how appropriately the organizational goals and our goals are, and how well they are achieving it, how, how efficiently and how effectively they are achieving it. The first model is basically system resource model, in which we have to how the organization is acquiring the scarce resources and valuable resources. As I told you, we are in the economy, we have scarce resources in global, in country, so we have to manage them, we have to use them carefully, we have to utilize them in a way which benefit our organization and economy. Then we have process model, in which we will see how efficiently and how productively the organization transformation process, how effectively the organization convert their input into output, how productively and how efficiently they use their input and get the maximum output. So this is the process model and the multi-contingency model, in which we have the effectiveness of the organization in meeting each contingency's need. So in this we look how the organization meet their contingency need. Organization has so many needs, so how they are fulfilling these needs. Then we have the next slides, in which we have the tool for controlling organization performance. We have three type of controlling tools. The first one is feed forwarded and concurrent, and in the next slide we have the feedback control. So we will discuss from the first one, feed forwarded. Um, in feed forwarded, we will try to try to control control or careful about the anticipated problem. If we try to avoid that in the future we will not face the problem. If from some situation we can anticipate that we can, if we are doing this project or if we are working on this goal, so we can face these type of problems. Maybe we have some sort of mm, uh, finance shortage, or maybe if the organization turnover rate is 2% or 3%, so we can estimate that maybe we will at the end of this year or the 2 year 3 year we will lose our these numbers of employees. So we have some backup plan for it in order to avoid the problem or disturbance to achieving our goals. So this is the feed forwarded. For example, if the student is coming for a class, so he or she can anticipate the problems. Maybe if I don't uh, catch the point, so I have some backup plans for auto and some public bus, or maybe my own bike, or maybe brother drop me or father drop me. So he or she can anticipate, or if I go to the class, so maybe I need some pen and pencil, so I have this whole thing. And maybe I need some internet for Google or whatever we are trying to achieve. The student goal is basically taking the class, so this is the journey which he or she has to cover. So in this journey he has faced so many phrases, so many phases. So in each phases he or she can face a different problem. So we can anticipate the problem and trying to avoid it. We work on it. So building in quality through design. So we design our plan in a way which is qualitative. Okay, then requiring supplier conform to ISO 9002 standards. So we have to reassure our production that it's meet the ISO standards or not. Is the International Organization for Standardizations. So every company have to meet them, because these are the standard which set by the International Organization for Companies. Then we have the concurrent control, in which we are monitor our activity when it's in the process. So direct supervision management by walking around. If the organization is producing something, so the manager can directly supervise the production department um, in order to avoid any problem. So in this, we are monitoring the activities when it's in the process, and because if if any problem or any difficulties faced by the organization, so it will costly. So it's better to evaluate before the situation or during the situation. It's more effective way. And then we have feedback control, like I said in the previous slide. So when the students give the exam, so he will get some feedback, he will get some evaluation on their paper, on their assignments, on their quizzes, whatever the things or projects they have done. So feedback is very good. It has so many advantage, and if the person work on it, and if it's he or she is not work on it, so definitely it useless. In the organization situation, it's same, because if the employee get the feedback and he or she is not work on the weaknesses, on their lacking, so it's useful. It useless, because basically feedback means is that we work on them. So feedback control is basically take place after the activity is done. When the activity is finished, so we give the feedback to individual, to worker, and we take then the corrective action, because it is the very important part in the feedback, because corrective action is the basic and the vital thing of doing feedback. So it has very a lot of advantages. And the individual know about their performance, know about their progress, know about their strength, know about their weaknesses, and it's motivate them, and he or she will get know how he or she have to do the work, and how he or she have for the next project and next goal. So it's a very good way to improve the performance of individual. And then we have these three type of feedbacks in these three type of controlling tool in the dramatic diagram. Um, Basically, the feed forward control is input. uh, we before starting the process, before working on the process, we invest our we invest our time or evaluation, and we solve the anticipate problems before starting the project or plan. And then we have co-current control, which is in which we are evaluate the process, we evaluate the journey of the goal when it's in the process. So correct the process at the spot when it's happened, so we will not face or uh, the further problems. And feedback control is basically the output when the activity is complete, so we get feedback, and then we correct it for the next time. And after it, we have some tools for organization perform for controlling tools for organization performance. We have so many financial controls tools, in which we have traditional control, ratio analysis. In ratio analysis is the studies of this basically the studies of business performance, in which we collect the financial data and analyze it. So in financial data, we have the income statement and balance sheet, and we analyze it, um, and try to get the idea and the evaluation how the organization is performing. The first is liquidity. Liquidity is basically Liquidity ratio is basically the ratio in which we evaluate how much the organization is liquid, um, how easily they can pay off their debts. Then leverage or ratio is basically the ratio in which we will evaluate um, how the organization how much we evaluate the power of organization if the power of organization to pay the interest on their loan, whether if the organization sell their assets, so the organization is able to pay the interest of debts or not. And inactivity is basically how the organization, how efficiently and effectively the organization using their assets. And in profitability, we have we check out this ratio because we want to see how maximum benefit the organization is getting from their input, and much how much output they are getting from their input, how much the organization is basically making the profit and productive. And budget analysis, we have quantitative standard is basically um, whether it's achieving their production standards, or they are working and in the range of budget. And deviation, how much the extra expenses occurred and unexpected expenditures. So we will look whether this range of deviation is acceptable for organization or not. So, and then we have the other major in which we have economic added value, in which we watch whether the organization is if the organization is doing some investment and capital. So whether the organization is getting the value from these assets, adding the economic value or not. If the organization is investing the 10,000, so whether the organization is able to make it from 15,000 or not. So it is the sole purpose of organization. Basically, the organization existence is making profit, and if the organization is not able to achieve it, so their existence is useless and not beneficial, because all businesses work for making money. They have absolutely the other objectives too, which is the part of making profit, for example sustainability and maintaining quality and goodwill and satisfying customer. But these all are linked for making profit, because if they get these things, so ultimately they will get the profit and value, economic value, monetary value. So then we have market value added. It's also the other major. I think these two major is not discussed in our book or chapter, but for knowledge I add them. And the other ratios, not the other ratios. We discussed these ratios in the previous slides, but now we will seeing the formulas of these ratios, the how we calculate them, and what we call them. And the first one is liquidity. Basically, liquidity ratio is in this it is the current ratio in which we check the liquidity of organization. And the formula of on the calculation of this ratio is basically we take the current assets and current liability from balance sheets. So and then we divided them and then we get some ratio. So what the meaning of it? Testing the organization ability to meet the short-term obligation, whether the organization is able to meet their obligation, meet their debts, meet their liability. If they have good assets and they have low liability, so it has a good liquidity ratio. But if they had a lot of liability and they have not certain value of assets, so they are not able to meet them, so we check it. Because if they are not able to meet their debts of short term, so it's create problems. It's lead to bankruptcy, and the organization is ultimately shut down. So making profit is the continuous process, and it's create or it's maintain the existence of organization. Then we have add test, in which we can say it quick acid, quick ratio. Basically, in the current ratio, we have inventories, because inventories, sometime inventories, we are not able to sell our inventories quickly, and so it's in order to take out the more accurately the liquidity of our organization, we take the asset at test, which we call the quick ratio. The formula and how we calculate it. We minus the inventory from the current assets, and then we divided the current liability with the current assets, in which we have cash and account receivable, and I think so bonds, etc. Then the meaning of this test is in which these test more accurately, these test liquidity more accurately, because in which we minus the inventories, and when the inventories turn over slowly and are difficulty to sell. So sometimes we are facing to selling our product, we are facing to we are not able to liquidize or to convert our inventories into cash. So it's very important to take out the accurate liquidity of organization. So then we have leverage ratio, leverage, in which we check in which we checked how much the organization is leveraged, and how efficiently and effectively the organization able to pay their debts. So we have the total debts and total assets. Divided the total debts with total assets, and we will able to get the idea whether the organization is able to meet their debts or not. And then we have time interest on, in which we have the profit before interest and tax. So we minus the profit, we minus the tax and interest from the profit we earn, and then we divided the total interest charge. So um, when we are surviving in this environment, so obviously we are paying some taxes to government, and if the organization have some debts or some liabilities, so they are paying the interest for it. And so before giving the loan or giving the funds to organization, the bank or funded companies check the time interest on whether the organization is able to give the interest charges or not. So after calculating it, we are able to get the idea whether the organization will meet it or not, and measure how far they profit can decline before the organization is unable to meet its interest expenses. So we minus the costs or expenses from the profit, because in profit we have taxes and we have interest, so we minus them, and then we will take the net profit, and after it we divide it from interest rate. So if they have a good ratio, so of course the organization meet their interest rate, and if they have a poor ratio, so of course they are unable to pay their interest off. So our time is over, and I'm lefting for now. And from the coming session, we will continue from the next slide. So hope you guys are getting some thing or some concepts from these lectures. And if you guys have any queries, so you can ask on the comment session or the group. And thank you so much. Be safe and sound. Khuda Hafiz.